Welcome back, everybody, to Gringos Liberados. This is episode 13, our last episode before the finals for Split 1 here in 2024. My name is Trajan, and we once again have a focused, narrow podcast here. We've got the two guest slot version here. Exactly, we're keeping it very much focused here, and I have to give a disclaimer to everybody. I am a little under the weather. I'm a little ill. My throat is a little sore. I am once again self-medicating, but not with alcohol this time, so don't worry, it's not becoming a habit. It is instead with something that we call Lemsip in the UK. And this is like, it's basically just powder that you pour hot water on and it becomes a drinkable, like, throat soothing drink. Most people agree that it is absolutely vile.
It tastes vile, okay.
Yes, very bad. So people put like sugar and honey in it, but it does work. So I'm suffering, but we'll get there. We had to talk about the CBLOL here, because
yes, we do.
The finals are just around the corner, and we had two. I actually thought these two series were very good. I thought they were very good series. The playoffs, as soon as we got into the lower bracket, I've been loving all the lower bracket that we've gotten here. Some of the early upper bracket ones were bad. They were washes. People didn't look good. The results weren't ideal. But the lower bracket's been fun.
It's true. I think when we talk about lower bracket, there's also the first half when we had VKS loss, and it was like a 5-game for some reason. Like first seed VKS, 6th seed loss. Like it's a little harsh, but then that's why I think it makes the VKS games in the second half just feel so much better. At least to me, for the VKS Red games in the Saturday, it just made such a big difference because they felt more cohesive. You're talking about Smiley, although we have to address the misfortune at some point, and we will. we're also talking about Smiley feeling a little more comfortable and just having more impact and not just getting completely run over by Bronzy, for example, because that would be the biggest threat in the Red game for that bot lane.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking about. That's what RMC and I were talking about in the last episode, was that we expected Smiley to just get stomped. We expected him to get bulldozed in the rest of this playoffs because we have so many strong AD carries left. And from what we'd seen, we had seen him get a little punished against Loss. And luckily for VKS, Loss had the only bot lane that was worse than them, like, in the playoffs. And that seemed to work out for, well, apart from maybe the Tuna Sales, actually. Let's give Smiley and Prods a bit more credit. Yeah. But so they didn't have a strong opponent down there, right, is the point. And even then, Cello and Cabby somehow managed to put on a great performance against them. So we were worried about Smiley. However, the guy came in on a mission into this weekend. He was playing crazy. He was so much better. It feels like they finally managed to find a comfortable spot for him in the meta. And Pro Delta as well, who has been quietly very good in the playoffs down in support, especially on things like the Rakan. This was a big glow up for them. And let's just get into this Red VKS series, because you were casting this one. And this was my favorite of the two, for sure. I love this series. This was so fun. It was so CBLOL from start to finish. They were just throwing hands. Perma. Every single game, they were throwing hands.
They were. It was very nice. I think when we went into this, I was already like, okay. First game. Wait, was it for... Oh, okay. So I'm looking at the match history, but it's a little bit out of order because I do remember that the first game was the Misfortune game.
Yeah.
So
started
we
on
looked at that Misfortune. I agreed. I agree. But also it felt like having the Misfortune game, if I'm not mistaken, was it? Yeah. It's a little confusing now. What was the order of it? Because it wasn't... I think the second game was definitely Misfortune with Janna. It wasn't Janna on the first game.
Yeah.
I think it was Janna with Misfortune with Rakan trying to deny the Xayah on the side of Red, which of course makes quite a lot of sense. But the Misfortune, not that much. So you're trying to punish the the enemy bot lane when you're looking at Bronzy. And Bronzy is like the most proactive and most dangerous of bot lanes in the laning phase. And you get the Misfortune. I kind of understand what you're going for. You're trying to at least put some pressure there. You have a Vi in the jungle on both of those games. You can have that pressure. You have on one Atalia and the other one an Aurelion Sol. There is a place where the Misfortune could be doing well against the Xayah, especially when it's not paired with a Rakan. But then when they executed it, the presence was just not that at all whatsoever. So if you... Yeah, there were games with the Nocturne Oriana combo as well for
they
Leleco,
were
which is
first picking Oriana for this guy. They really
it,
wanted this Oriana
they
for
were.
him, which was odd.
Yeah.
I thought. I don't know why we were prioritizing this so hard for him. I don't know if they were just he's the guy who doesn't need a counter pick or something, and they were like, because it's Grevthar, and we'll just give him a mage and we'll use the Nocturne combo, which is great. They did some good Nocturne Ori combos, and I can see with the Rakan and maybe with the MF, you're layering a lot of ults together. But I feel like we saw this as well, that Nocturne Ori is such a fast combo. It gives you a really quick playmaking ability at range, and MF just is almost never going to be in position to like actually ult on the top of it if she doesn't have flash. Because she can't just be standing up to be in range for the ult against Rel, against Rek'Sai, against Lee Sin, because they'll just kill you. They'll be like, why are you in my face? I will flash you and kill you. So I don't love the theory. I can see what maybe they were going for, and MF is quite strong in lane. Like, it's got range with the E, and it can be a little bit safe, but it doesn't scale super well. And I'm not sure what the point of it is, honestly, when there's plenty of scalers, and we didn't see it that often. But it did not look great. Did not look great in this game, and the rest of the combo was fine. So maybe we could have done with something that does
another ADC. Because it's not just the misfortune, it's also the fact that it got misfortune with press the attack, which basically is, yes, you're going to try and do damage to Bronzy in the beginning of the game, but then it just didn't connect. They didn't really make that happen. And I agree with you about the Nocturne Oriana ulti. It works perfect, it's wonderful, but then the channeling of bullet time takes thrice the time when you're looking at the combo. So how are they going to just be there? Oh, we're going to stand here just after the combo is done, and we're just going to be under bullet time. Like, it just didn't happen every single time. FNB was going on to Smiley, just taking him down, chasing him down every single turn. And when you're as immobile as a Misfortune, it's a feast. They're going to eat so well that it doesn't even matter how you do in the early game. And on top of that, I would say that every single game that we saw as well from Delta on Enchanters was just so much better. I really liked the Janna pick. I don't know how you thought that performed, but I really liked it. I think Enchanters for Delta just feels so good. He feels very comfortable on them, and they're just so useful. One thing I mentioned with RMC during the games was going Redemption first pick, like first item, and then just going Redemption every single time that is out of cooldown. It's amazing. So it felt like Delta was doing a better job than Smiley was at trying to get that damage behind. But as soon as you give the ADC Jinx or Kai'Sa, then Smiley can actually perform, because that's why he does better on hyperscalers.
Yeah, like the Kai'Sa, it was banned in this first game. There were a lot of like bot lane bans, but if you have a Nocturne Aura combo, the Kai'Sa is the perfect answer, because that can just follow it. And you don't have to worry about the setup there. Kai'Sa can be half a map away and still ult in. So I think that, it wasn't necessarily perfect there. I did like the Janna. I do think that Janna is such a strong champion at what it is designed to do. It is almost uncontestable at the peel aspect, right? Is that the whole champion is almost built in this way, and it can have some other applications in the lane as well if you're good with your tornadoes, if you're good with your shields, if you're able to play the range properly. But it's so good at peel, it's so good at protecting Smiley, and I think we saw the value that it has for that, and it just gives Pro Delta and VKS another way to play bot lane. It's not just Nautilus, Rakan, and Rel, you know, there's a little bit of depth there that we don't necessarily see from a lot of people. One of the other supports that does have a bit of range there is Curry, but he notably does not have anything that can't kill you. You know, he doesn't play Janna because you cannot murder someone with it. So there, I love that Predator has the depth there. You know, I loved his Bard from last time. I like that the Hyperdegger was attempted, even if I maybe question how it panned out. You know, the theory was again there, and it shows that Pro Delta is still a very, very high value support that we have. So very happy with how his playoffs kind of continued, as he'd had like not as good of a season. He wasn't kind of popping as much as he was on Pain, and you know, the VKS were relying a lot more on top side, but he stepped it up in the playoffs for sure.
Oh, yeah. And as I said, I think there's also a difference between a half part of playoffs and second part of playoffs. They just unlocked something on them. Like, this is the moment where we really needed to outperform ourselves, and I think they did it. The biggest threats were definitely Bronzy there in the bot lane, and then FNB in the top. But when you're VKS, you're not as worried about top lane because of Gigod. You're also thinking they know that Smiley would be the weakest link. So I felt like VKS understood and read how they were going to be drafting better, which I enjoy. I still think the Misfortune wasn't a good pick. That's what we're going to mention as well when we talk about VKS versus Pain in a little bit.
It's coming back.
But it's coming back for some reason.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think they navigated Red's strengths really well. In shutting them down, in avoiding them. It was just very well executed from champion select to actual in-game play, which I love. And I was so excited about VKS going out to face Pain. But there is also need to talk about Red and why did it feel like they fell off?
Yeah, I mean, so game one, VKS game one, is they just have warm-up games, game one at least. They never look good coming into any of the series so far, and this was kind of the same. Even though game one wasn't a run over. Red was fairly in control once they got Dragon Advantage, they got the Soul, and once they had the Soul, they were just scrapping and fighting and winning, and that's very Red. But after that, Red just didn't look like they were able to contest VKS in a team fight scenario. They were getting outplayed and outmaneuvered, and this is the thing that Red, especially these Red players, have been so famous for being good at, is the team fighting and the kind of the moment-to-moment gameplay in important times, and they just didn't. They couldn't stack up. As you said, the drafting for VKS was great, and the composition answers were great, so they weren't able to get a super obvious comp advantage, so they had to do it with their hands, and they couldn't do it with the hands. The hands were not enough, which is, it's not what we're used to saying about Red. It's not. Normally, in the past, there was a long series of the Titan era of Red, and the hands were always enough, but sometimes the minds were a little disconnected from what they should be doing at the time. There was inconsistency there, and the judgments were maybe off. But this hasn't been the problem for them here. I think they've honestly just looked not as good, not as clean, not as effective as they have in the past, especially Aegis. Brunsey and Jojo have been mostly very good, but they haven't quite hit the highs of the Fluxu, Brunsey, Jojo. I think they were stronger most of the time on that team. FNB's been solid. I can't really cast aspersions toward FNB, but sometimes he has to play the Cassante and the tank Rek'Sai, and that's like his role is not always conducive to being the 1v9er. And then Grevthar as well has been up and down. So I think really for me, the mid-jungle duo for Red has been what has kind of let them down a little bit. I don't know if it's just that they're lacking power in mid or consistency in the gameplay. I think it's a bit of both. And there's been good games from both these players, but I'm used to seeing more, honestly, especially from Aegis. So we just lost a little bit of the sauce, honestly, from Red, I think, this year. And it showed. And VKS were able to just outperform them with a new rookie-ish kind of strange roster that we wouldn't expect to be able to get that much of a foothold here.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think I agree in regards to like talking about Aegis and Grevstar together. And I would say that I would even go ahead as to say that Aegis was a little bit more of the problem because at least on this series in particular, it felt like they were always behind the summons on the rotations. They were not always there, as you mentioned. They weren't contesting objectives. They weren't really trading objectives. I think there was one game that Red had a solid 6 Void Grubs, so they could really go for a Herald push, and they did it, but they didn't make as good use of it because VKS was rotating better and more preemptively. So it felt like when they had a good strategy, they were still not adapting fast enough to what VKS was bringing to them. So yes, it's because VKS was really doing much better than we saw them doing in regular season specifically and in playoffs, but as well, like a little bit slower on the side of Aegis. Left Grevstar not feeling as consistent because not having the jungler there kind of makes Grevstar float, feel a little aloof, not really having as much impact as necessary because on the top and bot lane, you're also thinking, they're going to do fine. So you need to get at least something in regards to pressure in the mid lane so that Grevstar is a little more comfortable. Because I think there were, it was Ahri for Grevstar, Ahri again.
It was just Ahri.
It was all Ahri. Yeah, it was
day.
all Ahri.
Yeah.
And I think that is also a problem. And it's kind of a Dinkato syndrome because we saw that coming from Pain a lot.
Yeah.
But if you are losing, change it up. change it up, make it come from a different place so the enemy has a harder time trying to navigate.
Yeah, like they banned his Nico pretty consistently, but that's kind of it. They banned the Hui once, they banned an Annie once. We were not pinching Grevthar's pool. All we were doing was removing Nico, and that is enough to force him to play Ahri 4 games in a row. Now, in game 1, his Ahri was good. He had an impactful Ahri, sure. I won't take that away from him. But games 2 and 3, we didn't see anything really. And game 4, he's 4-0 out of the lane. He has all the gold, all the resources. This is should be another carry Ahri performance. And the gold just falls into a vacuum and disappears, and we never see it again. And that game just kind of fell apart. And I don't know if it's potentially as well the fact that we saw Laleko adapting later on in the draft. Once they got him off the Ori, went into the Vigar, which we had speculated about. That had a great showing in game 3. And the Talia, which this is fast becoming my favorite pick of Laleko's. Whenever he brings a Talia out, his Talia is absolutely crazy. I love this pick for him. And it's also great into the Ari. So I think the Ari just wasn't the answer. We didn't have enough utility from it to let Grevthar affect the game. Game 1 was the only time he was really able to do so, and that is a big problem. That is a big problem for Red, and VKS just have a more complete package coming in here, and it showed very, very much so.
They do.
So VKS take it 3-1. Important to note as well that after game 3, we got a monster pop-off from Smiley after that game. He was standing up out of the chair. He was hooting and hollering. He was shouting and pointing. And he was not laughing. A lot of the CBLOL players do that, and they're kind of laughing and smiling. Smiley was not smiling. He was not. He was the opposite of smiling. Mad, bro. He was livid after that, and he popped off very hard. We start to see this when we mentioned already. He had a great series, and he really started to turn it around, and he was really feeling it, and that was great to see because he has been a bit overlooked, maybe a little bit, put upon as a one of the stranger imports. When you think of import slots, you don't necessarily think of like an ERL player, like a European regional Div 2 player, which is kind of what he has been for a while. But he was able to come here, put on the performances, and he got to stand up and shout about it. So I love that for him.
Yeah.
Big fan of that one for Smiley. For sure. So, with that series concluding, that obviously knocks Red out. I remember very vividly after game 4, the cut to Grevthar's face just looking a little bit confused, honestly, just like, oh, our season is just over. We're done. We're out 4th. Yikes. And that kind of, I felt the same way. But with them now out, we can speak a little bit about this roster and what we think Red needs to do. We did the same for Lost. We did the same for Kaboom. Let's talk about Red now that they have been knocked out after this round. And this, I think, is a very interesting question because Red keeps a lot of consistency in its players from season to season, which is a good thing. Players like Aegis have been like franchise players. Grevthar has gone and has come back. Jojo has gone and has come back. And they've got Brunsey, and FMB is fast becoming one of my favorite players that Red, I think, should really keep a hold of at this point.
Yes,
so
for sure.
What are your feelings so far on what Red should do finishing this? Because we're only split 1, a lot of times you'll keep a roster together for a full year. Do you think we need to be thinking about changes at Red and potentially changes in some of these players that they've had for splits on splits now?
I would say you don't need to change the roster. I think you have to adjust with what you already have because I agree with you. FNP and Brunsey have been just so good together, and I love how they gel well with the team. But there is, as we were mentioning, a little bit of a gap there on how Aegis performs when he's behind in the early game and how he wants to be ahead when he's doing Lee Sin, when he's doing Rel, or sometimes a Rek'Sai coming through as well. If you feel like it's behind, it kind of stays behind. They have a hard time trying to come back from it, which is very sad because you pointed out Grevthar having such great gold amounts in this bucket and just not being able to really make it to anything positive around the map, which is what we talked about in regards to VKS having faster rotation and then just Red not being able to contest it in time. Then I would say that yes, the biggest problem there is trying to understand from the shot calling who is keeping an eye on those timers, who is keeping an actual eye on the enemy jungler to be able to read it faster, because at this point they were just slower, and it doesn't match with how fast FNB and Bronze can be in regards to FNB just doing well in the top lane, if necessary being a tank, fine, but they do well, they don't throw any leads. Bronze doesn't do that either. So if they can connect exactly that, they are going to have Grafstar in a much more comfortable place where yes, it's going to translate into something around the map, because if you are Ari, that's your job, to translate your advantage in the mid lane into roaming potential, that it wasn't super well utilized. So if you have all of those working together, and now they are more aware of the level that CBLOL playoffs is, because it's different from what we had last year, for sure.
It is better. It is better.
For sure. So I think that's where they need to be focusing in, and no reason to change the roster, I don't think.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it feels like we're not using Aegis Grifthar to its fullest extent. Maybe it's just that the mid meta is really not suited for this concept. Like, apart from Nico and, like I said, Ari is so hard to have actual impact on. It's very rare that we see these leads turn into meaningful impact for how much gold they get. And there's a lot of Lee Sin for Aegis, and I don't know, is there room for more carries, like more carries that can scale better, that aren't just like a bridging jungler that can be active early but can't really win the game for you in the end of it. So I don't know if we're maybe just not able to find the right picks and the right style in the mid jungle. Like I said, I think FMB, Bronzy, and Jojo is such a strong like structure that you've got around here. FMB, who can do the carries and the tanks, consistent on both. Bronzy and Jojo, who are such a strong duo, and they're such consistent carry players. Bronzy, who can do late game, he can do early game, he can do laning, he can do all of this. Jojo, who can do engage. We don't tend to see the enchanters from Jojo as much anymore, but I think his role is just more so he needs to be an engager and like a primary engager, so they don't necessarily give him the chance to play like a Velios Lulu as much anymore. But we're just... something is not working with this mid jungle together and how they fit into this team as a whole. So either we need a meta shift or we just need like a game plan shift from them on this side to try and get back to what works there. Because there is a formula, there is an obvious system and a way to utilize these players. We're just not seeing the results. And there's no one to pick up that would be an upgrade in top or bot in jungle really either, unless you pick the next like super clever-esque, we found the next godlike jungler just randomly chilling in academy. And then in mid lane, honestly, I was thinking about this. I was like, okay, say if we had to replace Grefta, if we needed more power in the mid lane, what could we do? You know, who could probably like do with an upgrade in team? Maybe Envy, he could do with one. And I was like, well, that was just last split's roster. We just had Envy and we lost him to Greftar. And now I kind of want him back. I want Envy back, man. Envy had a great split.
Oh, it's funny. It's very funny when something like that happens. Especially for this game, this series in particular, because as you said, like having Grefta from VKS and then back onto Red, and then you have the same thing with Gigo, previously Red into VKS.
Yeah.
It's
and they can't pick up Takui. Takui's locked in. He's on the IDL. He's on the Iliad Slendas Academy team as well. He's been snapped up, so he's not available. But the only thing I guess is that Envy roster was a Titan. That was a Titan iteration. And so there, I think it does make a difference, right? I think Bronze is less prone to the sort of judgment errors that I think we saw from some of the Titan players. That being said, we'll get onto Pain in a bit. I think he's not really suffering from that right now, but we definitely saw that red roster have it. A lot of these problems are coming from Aegis and Titan, and I think Bronze is less likely to have that. So maybe Bronze Jojo, if they'd been there and been a bit more stable and reliable, but also still a good late game win condition, then with someone like Envy who can maybe plug that gap in the middle a little bit more, maybe that would work. But this can work. This formula clearly can work.
Yeah.
So much of it has worked in the past and has won titles in the past. I think, we just need the environment to shift a little bit, and maybe we can find the solution here to get this red back up into top 3 or higher. So, Red, rest in peace. We'll see you next split. Probably, I imagine we'll see them the same. As we said, Red do like to keep the consistency with the rosters. I'd be surprised if they blew anything up now, but we shall see what comes out of the offseason. Now, we get to move on to the next series, which was VKS versus Pain. VKS continuing their run through the losers bracket, very INTZ-esque in that way. But now they'd gotten into top 3. And this series, it was another 3-1. It was another like fist fight slobber knocker series. But for me, it felt very distinctly different to the Red series, because it really felt like Pain just had so much more thought going into everything they did. They felt a lot more practiced and polished in the fights they were picking, whereas Red were just going at it hell for leather, and VKS was like, okay, like we planned for this and we're prepared for this. And VKS were prepared for Pain as well, but I think Pain just looked... They actually looked very good. They looked very, very strong in this series.
I think polished is such a great word they used, because we're talking about VKS as they are now, a little bit of experienced players with rookie, with a new roster and how they're gelling together, getting into 3rd place, which is amazing. But then you face the absolute experience that comes on Pain Gaming, and how this roster is just like, it's not just the fact that they have the experience and the quality of experience and the grand finals, for that matter, because it's a whole different
they don't have a very high quality experience in grand finals.
I mean, trues, yes, but compared to VKS, it's like a new level.
Yes, absolutely.
We're talking relatively here.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. But it's also the fact that Pain is just so tired of being 2nd place that if they didn't even get to grand finals, that would destroy their moral altogether. So it was very necessary for them to guarantee this right here and right now, which is the thought and strength and cool and mental that they brought into the VKS game that, as you said, Red wasn't putting in at all. They were going and trying to play as it went, to go with the flow. But Pain was as premeditated as VKS was in the previous series, but more, with the elevated just factor of, we know how to play a best of 5. We know how to navigate Summoner's Rift unless it's against Loud. You know, it's usually how it goes, right?
Yeah, they do look very, very comfortable. It looked like it never even crossed their minds that they wouldn't make finals. Like, it just was a logical impossibility for them. And that's the Pain guarantee. And it has been a hot minute since Titan's been up there, because the Red rosters that he's been on, I think 3rd was the highest result, and that was last split with the NV mid lane roster. But they looked so confident here, and as I'd kind of alluded to, we are seeing a very, very strong Titan right now. He is playing forward. He was willing to flash aggressively into a fight if he sees the window, but he is not doing it at a ridiculous time. Anytime he picks one of these crazy fights, you can see the angle, and more often than not, it works out, because the team is ready for him, and he's judging these calls very well. Whereas in the past, sometimes when the pressure is on, we start to see his judgment get a little shaky. So I think Titan is firing on all cylinders right now. And Pain, as rough as they looked coming into playoffs, we've managed to elevate back to the level that we normally see for Pain in the playoffs, where they become this very, very polished, very controlled team. And their experience manifests in that way, where they look like they are just a cut above in terms of game sense and gameplay everyone else. Whereas, you know, some of the other teams, when the experience comes in, it's a clutch moment, it's a 1v5, it's a Baron steal. Pain does have the Baron steal in them from karaoke for sure, but they look just elevated when they are playing well, and they looked elevated in this series, and that's the form we need from them going on into the grand finals, which we'll get on to. But let's talk a little bit more about this series. So, as we said again, it was a fist fight again. There was a lot of fighting, again, in most of these series. Even though lane swaps are back, as well as a side note, that came back from the last series.
Yeah.
We do have the lane swaps that have bled in here with the Scions. I don't know how you feel about lane swaps, Sovchan, if you have a particular, like, a lot of people hate them with a fiery passion. I personally don't get as tight about it, but...
Yeah. I dislike it, but not as passionately, I would say. I don't think we're in a metaphor for doing such at the moment. It doesn't feel very right. And to be fair, it was something that I felt like VKS used well. They actually started the lane swap, which I didn't enjoy. I don't think it was a good place for them to do a lane swap, for them to initiate a lane swap. But then how Red tried to go around it didn't work, so VKS got an upper hand. In this case here, you're talking about Pain, and the experience game plan that they have just means that they are more used to making those fast-paced adjustments that was much more well navigated. And in regards to like composition overall as well, Trajan, we're talking about Pain VKS first 2 games having almost the exact same matchup on every lane, aside from a swap between Talia Hui on Leleco.
Yeah, that was an interesting strategy.
That is good for Pain because it worked. Because but for VKS, why would you do it?
I don't know, man. Yeah, Pain came in that first game, and like it was a good close game, but Pain were generally in control of it. The main difference, I think, Pain bot lane was very strong there. There was a lot of pressure put on them, but Titan and Curry managed it well, and you know, Pain just kind of played out a nice normal game of League of Legends, and they outscaled and they won. They outplayed in the key moments. And then I don't know why VKS decided that to just run the exact same thing back, man. And it just went worse. Almost like I don't get it, man.
It's like Pain was like, well, we knew how to play this. Now we know it better, so we're gonna do it again and faster.
And now you don't have Leleco's Talia, so you can't insta roam across the map. You don't have as reliable of a carry in the mid game, and Leleco honestly didn't look super comfortable on the way. So, and we know the Talia is great for him. We know that's a good pick for him, and we just didn't have it this time because we left his pick lane and got banned. So, it was a weird one. They did at least stop drafting that exact same comp after that point, but VKS it feels like they lost a free game in game 2 by just trying to run that strategy back, and I don't know why they chose to do that. Maybe just like, I don't know, it's simply execution diff. We simply misplayed this dive. We misrotated here or that. And then Coach CL can just be like, it's not the draft. It's not me, guys.
Yeah.
This one's on you.
That's what
We're running it back.
Yeah. You know, that's what I saw. Like, but it doesn't stick, does it? If you didn't do well, why under pressure with 1 game deficit is it going to do better on the same composition? Like, it doesn't really stick to me. And I don't think it's a good decision from CL in that case. But let's talk about the fact that in the second and the third game, in the next one, there was that misfortune for Smiley. And they actually won them the game. But again, it wasn't the misfortune who won them the game. She was an accessory. She was there.
This was a crazy game. This was a 23-minute win. The first 2 games were over 30 minutes, and like they're playing comps with the Azirs and Zayas and Kai'Sas. We're normally scaling into at least the 30-minute mark. This one was just a smash from VKS, which I don't think anyone saw coming. After Pain had just summarily beaten them in 2 games in a row, we pick the MF back up again, and then we take the Aurelion Sol, a champion which is designed to win post 30 minutes, and then we just run them over in 23. That was crazy, honestly. And maybe it's just it really set up that as VKS. Games 1, maybe games 1 and 2, this is just data gathering time. We're doing experiments, we're doing a bit of science behind the scenes, and then we come in ready to reverse sweep, as so many of their series have gone the distance. Because they're just so rough in the first couple of games. And then they came back in and completely rolled over Pain, and I think a lot of people thought that, oh, we're doing the sweep again. We're about to sweep Dinkado for the second time. It's going to be rough for him. And we're just going to, like, VKS have just logged on. And yeah, this was with like an Udyr top, an ASOL, and the MF. It's just such a strange comp from what we normally see. But it worked so well. And I think this was just an execution thing. I think VKS just came in. All of their early plays worked out perfectly. Every single time when they had was right, and they pushed it super hard. So that was like, this is what VKS can do when their game plan is on point, regardless of what the champions they have. They can look really, really effective.
And speaking of regardless of champions, there is something just very clear here about how Kuri played in the series, because they did play all Rakan aside from this one game that VKS won, which was denied thereby for Delta. They didn't look hard on the on the Rel. I don't think it was their fault. I think overall, I wasn't a big fan of the Jax in the jungle there for Carioca. I don't think Carioca played the Jax really well. The Twisted Fate also at this point in the meta didn't convince me that much there for Wiser. But mostly the fact that you take away the synergy of Zaya Rakan really felt to bring Pain a one step back in the early game. So maybe they were expecting to have the same sort of privilege in the laning phase or the same sort of pressure in the laning phase that they didn't with the Rel. Not that she's bad, she's incredible as a support, but it's just the upper hand of both of the lovers duo together that makes a difference. That when it goes through again for Pain, they go Zaya Rakan and they win. And that's a big problem to say about drafting for VKS for, as you said, first 2 games. 1, you lose. Fine. Don't run it back on the second. Then for the next one, you deny one of those picks. And it's the only one that you actually deny. All of the others are different. The only one you do deny, you win the game. And then you let it go again for Zaya Rakan for Titan Kuti.
Yeah.
It just felt like it was the most practiced bot lane for them, the most priority they had, and they knew how to take advantage of it. And then Smiley was just left in the dirt, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is just the Rakan had the 100% win rate in this series, and it seemed to be insanely effective for Pro Delta especially. His Rakan is absolutely crazy, man, when he gets it.
Agreed.
And then for Curry, I just think I really don't like Curry on picks that have no recourse, that have no plan B once you've decided to do something. So the Rakan is great because you can go in, you can go out, hyper mobile, you can always choose what to do. The Nico, you don't have to commit until you hit the root in the lane. You can poke from range in the lane, you can wait for the perfect moment to ult, you have the clone for extra bit of defense there, you get a shield when you ult in, it's great. And the Ashe as well, you can play for range. The Rel, when you're in, and that's just it. You just have to live with the decision
like a Leona.
Yes, like an Alistair and these kind of things. You have to live with the decision you made. And Curry's hyper aggressive, and sometimes he gets a bit too aggressive. You know, sometimes we've all been there. Sometimes he just makes a little bit of an ambitious call, and the Rel gives him no leniency there. So I think earlier on in the split, we saw this as well. Back when Titan and Curry were still kind of gelling in, we did see, I think, some problems with that. So I like that the Rakan is a great fit for him, and Prodelsa is just a super solid player for this, and we didn't see as much of the enchanters from him. We saw the Janna in the last game, but the first 2 were the Rel, and we didn't get to see as much of what had been working so well for the spot lane before. They're pairing it with a Kai'Sa. You can see the engage plus Kai'Sa angle there, but maybe we just didn't need to prioritize this. This kind of feeds into the other interesting point about this bot lane, which is that the meta over the last weekend has now just become Kai'Sa Xayah every game. It's just Kai'Sa Xayah.
Yes, I was just going to mention too.
And Misfortune, I suppose.
For Smiley. Only for him.
Only for him. He's got that one. So we probably won't see it again now that Smiley is out. But so the Xayah coming in, I think, I'm trying to think what came first, because the Kai'Sa came back in with that sort of AP-ish build again, and then we were just doing AD with it again with Shiv as a hard engage option to try and punish maybe these immobile scalers like like Jinx and Kog'Maw and these kind of things that were happening. And then the Xayah has always been the Kai'Sa answer because it's anti-engage, it's anti-dive. So now we're just picking the Xayah anyway because Rakan is also massive, so we can just do the Xayah Rakan. And Titan loves Xayah. Xayah was like his best pick last split. He was like this was the champion that he was winning the games that Red should have lost. He was on Xayah and he was doing some crazy stuff. So it's just interesting that this matchup, and I wonder if this is going to continue into the next match as well. The Kai'Sa Xayah has become the prio, and we've kind of moved away from these longer range scalers that aren't as good at scrapping in 2v2.
And I'm having a look here. I'm trying to predict the order because I actually don't have it. But I would say for VKS, if they were not picking either Xayah or Rakan to deny them, then what was the priority for them? I think it was the Rek'Sai for Gigo, just because Rek'Sai is good at the moment. But I wouldn't say that it's very necessary to have Gigo on such a priority when he can play so many champions so well. I would say Talia is a great priority definitely. When they can do Orianna, it's also a good priority, but it was always banned, so that wasn't the case. So going for something for Leleco made sense. Then you have a Jarvan for the Summers. I think the Summers also has a decent pool in regards to early game
for sure.
to be playing against Carioca, to just be focusing on that. Aside from it, yeah, you can do the Kai'Sa, but you know they're playing Xayah.
Yeah.
And as you said, Trajan, the Xayah is the counter.
This was the point.
It's just counterintuitive. Like, you're giving them, like, the as you said, the priority is so big that you don't even need to be playing against the Kai'Sa to make good use of the Xayah, but they were still getting the Kai'Sa in. So they were always one step below, and they were trying to focus Delta on having that rel, which I don't think they do bad at. But I would have preferred to see something different. I really would have. And they do so well for Delta on the enchanters that I loved when they were Jenna again, although it was a misfortune. And it does make sense. You want to have as much SD as possible for those first hits in lane. But still, the rest of the draft felt a little bit uncohesive in regards to strategy. As an isolated draft, it's fine. It can play. It's a good composition. The champions are strong. Nice. But the way you're navigating through it doesn't feel like, for example, what we saw in the Loud versus Pain series. It felt like every single premeditated choice in draft from Loud was made to deny Pain at every corner.
Yeah.
And I think that was what was missing, because VKS was putting themselves on those traps, unfortunately, and Pain was just like, "Oh, thank you, I guess."
Yeah, we'll take the Zyra Khan again. Thank you. Fine. We literally don't care what you play. We're going to take this duo if you give it to us.
Yeah.
Like, maybe just not assigning enough threat to the Curry Rakan, or not enough priority on the Prodelta Rakan, and choosing to give it over, when if they'd just been focusing that for Prodelta the whole time, Prodelta's going to have a great game on it. He's great at this champion, and we're denying that combo. So maybe just a small miscalculation on the bot lane dynamic there. And it was just so apparent how much more comfortable Titan and Curry were compared to Brunsey and Jojo in this like matchup into Smiley. They were doing so well, because again, it's all just bot dives perma right now. Like in the meta, it's just the junglers just pick skirmishes and they go bot. They go bot over and over and over and over again. And Titan and Curry were able to really comfortably deal with that pressure, whereas Brunsey and Jojo weren't always able to. Like, it was fairly back and forth between VKS and Red, and Pain were just always able to be coming out on top in the bot side, it felt like, because they just have the best bot in the league, and they've got the best duo that you can draft for bot laners, and you know, it just really felt like a simple choice for Pain to make, and it really paid off there. So we'll see if Root wants to opt into this trade that seems to be happening a lot now, or if he's going to go back to the Varus, which was an option before, if they're going to give over a Zeri that he might want to take, if the Lucian's going to make it through as well, because this was perma-banned away from Titan this series. We'll see if that maybe has an influence on the bot side, because I know both Root and Titan have one. So the bot lane meta is shifting in a strange way going into the final. It's kind of narrowing into this it's shifting away from what we've seen in the rest of the playoffs. Now, the other super simple decision that Pain were happy to make was the Azir. They locked in the Azir mid 3 times before it was banned away from them. And this was the resurgence of the tank Azir. Dinkato brought it back to try and redeem it after we had a very disastrous foray into that in the middle of the split. But this looked actually good. He did tank Azir, and it was always with high damage top laners, Rumble or Twisted Fate, and it actually looked kind of good. So for now, I'm ready to give it a pass, you know? I'm ready to witness the tank Azir and not cry as much.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the regular traditional Azir and the Xayah, in regards to how they do damage, is all about the damage per second and how much they're going to be attacking. So it's similar. You can give it away because, as you said, you're going to have the Rumble, you're going to have the Twisted Fate. Also, filling out those shoes of having more priority in regards to damage. Then the Azir becomes more of an engage, more of a disengage, more of a setting up, and being able to just be safe in lane as well, especially when you have a Vi next to you. So it was 3 Vis and then 1 Jax. So for the Vi games, you just know that wherever Carioca decides to go, they're fine. Jinkedo is fine in the mid lane because of being an Azir, which is usually what you feel about having an Orianna, just very safe pair of hands. But in this case, you have even more control because you can throw yourself in because you're going to survive more hits. And at the end of the day, you could even do Zhonya's and have even more buying time for the Xayah to be available. So it works out really, really well. I wasn't expecting it at all. I thought it was going to die after regular split. I really thought it was. But seeing Dinkedo play 4 games, and 4 games as Ahri on the previous series for them, I wasn't a super fan. And it's funny how it became Grefta played 4 games of Ahri as well in the fight against VKS. I still wasn't very convinced. I mean, I think they did play well. I don't think it's an Ahri problem. It's how people play with the Ahri in the team.
Yeah.
That they said, well, we're just going to switch this around completely with the Azir and even make the enemy think that we're doing Azir for the damage, but then you're not. You're going back to the tank. And I think it's a good way to throw your enemy a little bit off balance.
Yeah, I think they found a nice middle ground of the build, because I think previously they were literally going like Riftmaker into Frozen Heart and just like so much tanking and so little damage. But this time it was Liandry's into Zhonya's, as you'd said, then Frozen Heart, then Abyssal Mask. So you have damage to be useful in some way in the first 25 minutes, and then you start to become really solid. When the game devolves into big objective fights where you need to be able to get the shuffles off, you have the Frozen Heart done, you get the Abyssal Mask done, and there were multiple times where Dinkedo is either aggressively engaging or being aggressed upon, and is able to survive because he has this big chunky HP pool and he's got the extra resistances, and it wastes so much of the enemy's time. Plus he can still just get Liandry's proc on everybody with the ult and just like start back up with the E, step back in with the W, and do a lot more. So I liked the tank Azir here. Clearly, it has a place when you have damage in the top side. Just draft damage in the top side. Then it's okay. Then it works. Then you have fixed your profile. So this was an interesting development here. And one, again, that I don't think we've seen the Tinones attempt this at all. We've not seen much Azir from him in general, I don't think.
Yeah.
But Dinkedo, now that it's enabled again, I think is happy to go use this as a priority in the mid lane. And it's a pretty tough nut to crack, as you'd said. It's hard to punish Azir at the best of times, let alone when he's got tank items coming through. So this might be something that could help Dinkedo in what has been a traditionally very rough mid lane matchup for him. So we'll see if that is able to work out. I think the only other thing that I wanted to mention with this series is the way it ended. Pain getting a really clean backdoor against VKS. Again, the series was fairly close a lot of the way through, but Pain just had a really lovely commitment into the enemy base while VKS were baited into the dragon. They stopped the teleports from getting back. They stopped everyone else from getting through there. It was just it wasn't a messy backdoor. It wasn't like the Kaboom versus, I think it might have been Pain actually, like at the end of the split, that was just like chaos from the camera didn't know where to look.
It was so chaos.
Yeah, and it wasn't like that at all. It was like they opened a window, pulled VKS away, committed really cleanly, and just got a really solid backdoor done. So that was it put a lovely capstone on that for me, for Pain being strategically ready to step forward into the grand finals, because they look like they're making good decisions, they're making good plays, and they're drafting good compositions. And you have to have all 3 of these if you have a single chance. So
yes, the only one.
Yes, so that is encouraging for me. Now let's talk a little bit about VKS. Let's do the VKS victory here, just before we preview the finals. We know from VKS that this is meant to be a long-term project, and we know already that they have plans for Mortius in bot lane, but honestly, Soph, after this, I kind of think we keep Smiley on for another split. I don't think we hot swap him now.
Yeah. I think I'm convinced. I am convinced as well. So for everybody watching this on YouTube, we got Tuquid still on the photo, but then half the split we have Leleco. So not actually Tuquid, but and speaking of Leleco, we're also talking about a player that I didn't expect to perform as well as they did. I think they became incredibly reliable when, to be honest, they didn't have any right to be as reliable as they were, given their experience, and especially dealing with the deficit in the bot lane because of how the teams usually on CBLOL were aggressive and being able to really deny Smiley any place to grow. although Predelta was doing a good job there for VKS, I think that they grew massively on playoffs, amazingly so that Leleco had a good place to still be reliable. And then we finally found Smiley dealing damage. They were very low on the damage per minute one day. I think RMCs had that for us uh, on the trivia, but it just really turned it on his head. I think it came with a better rotation and integration from Desames for the bot lane that also allowed them to feel more comfortable. And I agree with you. I don't think you swap out Smiley here. I think they did well, but I also think that if he is so confined with a strict and small champion pool, that has to be worked on immediately. Because you cannot just fall over like, oh, I don't have Kaisa, I don't have Xayah, then just misfortune. No, do not do that. Do misfortune when you actually feel and you know that you are going to have a composition that can protect misfortune. That wasn't the case. All of those compositions we're going into the back line, and misfortune was left just bare hands, couldn't do anything with FNB and Wiser going on to them and just taking them out on the spot. So I think it's more of a how they make decisions. And to be fair, I think CL did super great to get the players to where they were, third place on a roster like this. Man, that's huge.
Yeah, with the very strange kind of pieces and these imports that no one really expected. And to get this level of play out of them, especially in the long series, in the best of fives, when the chips are down and they have to perform under pressure, they did so well. And I really like the atmosphere that they seem to have. If anyone has seen like some of the backstage content that they have and the vlogs and stuff that they do, it seems like they have a really good environment to grow in for players like Desames, who I've been like just wanting to find the right home for Desames for so long. It feels like this is a good place for him to see if we can make that final leap into the very top of Brazilian junglers. Prodelta, of course, once we got to the end of the split, really started performing. Gigo, sadly, we didn't see as much of again in playoffs. We started to see the Udios come through, but he was still doing his job. It was much more like kind of last split Gigo. It wasn't the Gigod that we saw from before, but we know that is in him in this split. So I think they have this really strong core of Brazilian players who are very confident there. They've now added in Leleco as the rookie, as another Brazilian player in there who just, as you say, slotted in with no problems at all. Looked really strong. Is certainly a talent that either you hold on to this guy and you keep him developing, or you sell him for like £1 million, because he's so you're going to get such a massive return on investment there, because everyone sees how good this guy is. So if he's not going to stay here, he's going to go into a good team and he's going to be worth a lot. So good for him. But I think they should want to keep him on. And then Smiley. Yeah, once we got to the end, I think he has earned another split of play for sure. We do need to try and fix some of these pool issues, because like if we're not in this exact kind of bot lane meta, I didn't like the Kalista, I didn't like the Lucian, I didn't like these other picks that other players were able to make better use of. So yeah, we do have some work to do on Smiley there, but certainly he has the I love where his head's at. And he does have the potential in him to perform at the highest level from what we've seen. So there's not really a change that needs to be made here. We know that they're not going to make quick changes because they have explicitly stated that's not the point. If they do, it will be a very uncharacteristic walk back of the plan that they have stated is in place here. It's really just when they swap the AD carry out, which is something they've stated. And it was going to be a question about mid lane, but now it's just not, because Takui has moved on. Leleco was great. We don't have any more questions there. You know, we're happy with that answer. So I think this is a very strong position, and they can certainly keep with this roster, make a run for even more next time around. Yeah,
and having Leleco starting out from the beginning of regular season, going into playoffs, and not having him like be on one place and then the other, it's gonna bring a lot of just great consistency that we saw in playoffs, because they were under pressure and they were brought to this, I would say, by great guidance on the side of CL. So having that from the beginning is just going to build even more cohesion, even more understanding and communication between these players, that they're finally going to get into a place that gets good results like they did in first seeding of regular season, but also understanding more how to play about these really experienced, loud, Pain, Red squads that I did really well against Red. But I also found that some of these were Red's fault and how they made those decisions themselves. So whenever we have this composition again for next split, maintaining it as it is, because as you said, they didn't want to change anything. They only changed the Tukwili with Leleco because Tukwili had a health problem. Only because of that.
Yeah.
So whenever we have that coming out next split, man, I am so excited because it's going to make huge difference to have all of these players with already playoffs experience getting third place. You don't just get into playoffs. They got third place. Oh, I am really rooting for them.
Yeah, sadly for Rude Dude, he does not get his first place prediction, but I'm willing to give him a partial credit for them finishing first in regular season, which again nobody else thought was going to happen. Nobody else.
Oh, I did.
Did you? Okay, I'll give you partial credit.
Yeah.
Too. You can both get partial credit for first in regular season. And third is, as I say, a very, very impressive result for them. So can't wait to see what they do next split. Hopefully they do not make any significant changes. We love what they're doing. So now, the last thing we need to do, Soph, is we need to talk about the final. We need to talk about Pain versus Loud, fifth edition, fourth edition, I think, because this is Pain's fifth final, and the last
it was three Louds and then
red. There was a red one back.
Yeah, it was two Reds and then three Louds.
Sure, so maybe sixth final. No, because it was Renska before Pain, because Pain got knocked out by Renska, I think, before the Pain Red one, in like 2021.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it should have been, probably should have been Pain Red, but it was not. Renska just okay. True. So fifth final in a row for Pain, fourth in a row against Loud. Pain finally got their first win in grand finals against Loud last time around. They're, I think, 11-1. Or 12-1, I guess, because they've still lost, or what's that, 9-1 against Loud in the last grand finals, because they went 3-0, 3-0, 3-1. So there's character development there, and Pain did get the 3-1 in winners finals. I say get the 3-1. They got pretty smacked around in that winners finals. It didn't really look close, as you'd said. Loud came very prepared to just counter everything that Pain wanted to do. And it didn't look hard. So we need to think about, is there a reason to believe that this is going to be different? So is there something we can cling on to here to think this is why Pain are not going to just get buried for the fourth straight split by Loud?
I think I could. Simple answer is, I don't think there's enough evidence here to really cling on to the simple answer. But the long version would be, if I saw Pain facing against another team instead of VKS on the losers finals before coming back for their rematch with Loud, then I would have a different opinion. But as much as I think VKS played incredibly well, I don't think they are still a good parameter to be comparing with Loud, right? Which is their next matchup. So if, for example, if Red had performed better themselves, I would have thought that Pain winning, for example, 3-0 or 3-1 would have meant more, although that's what they did last split as well. Was it 5 games? Or was it 4?
4.
The Red versus Pain, 4? Yeah. So I think that would have meant more because of I think they just believe on the Red roster more in regards to their experience in playoffs than I do for VKS. So the deficit or the result you have between both of them just create a bigger gap in between what you had for Pain versus VKS. That said, I still think that Pain played this as they would be playing against Loud. So they were really much prepared to read drafts well, but they weren't forced to have to actually read drafts well, because VKS was one step behind in how they were making those decisions and really letting champions come through that it wasn't supposed to be allowed at all. So Loud is not going to do that, but it felt like Pain was prepared for that possibility. So I think they do have a good possibility, but I still don't think this is, oh yeah, they've shown so much that I believe that they can take it. I still don't.
Because I'm looking back at the Pain Loud series and winners finals, and just even looking at the bot lane, it's completely different. It's Lucian Nami's, it's Varus Ashes, Zeri Alistairs. We haven't seen any of those 6 champions in this series. Aphelios Lulu, didn't see either of them. Senna Tom, didn't see either of them. Kalista, we didn't see. The only champion that we saw from this series since that Pain Loud series is Kai'Sa. They played one Kai'Sa game,
the Kai'Sa.
and they had a Leona with it. Like, the bot lane meta coming into this now seems completely different, and if they are able to force it to still be Kai'Sa Xayah, I think this favors Titan a lot more, because especially the Xayah is just so dang good for him, and he is still able to threaten picks like the Lucian, so you have to force... allowed to realistically ban it on red side or whatever, so that they can't just let these things go through. So that is going to be different at the very least. I'm expecting difference there, and given how comfortable Titan and Curry looked, maybe this gives them a better foothold, because Root and Redbird looked absolutely sensational in that series. They looked so good, and they looked like the only duo that can match Titan Curry. So we need to hope that Titan Curry can make advantage with this shift in champion priority to maybe get them a better shot there. The other, I guess, biggest problem for me is the mid lane matchup. Dinkedo, particularly into Loud, just does not have any fun, man. Just doesn't have a good time. I don't know. It's just a Tinones thing. I don't know why he really suffers. And he tried 4 different champions last time. It didn't work. He looked a lot better in the losers bracket, though. So it maybe just comes down to a mental thing, right? If we're able to get Dinkedo's head right, then perhaps this becomes winnable, like on the spot. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's just something that it's too unreliable. Not that the players are unreliable, but this factor, the mental factor for this matchup, Pain Loud, is just something that heavily weights the performance on those players, because I don't think there's any pull issues with neither of these players at all. They all can do so much on everywhere. They know how to adapt. They know how to play aggressive early games, scaling late games, doing the in-between, adapting from being behind. Pain and Loud can play and win still on a deficit. So I don't think there's any problem whatsoever on that regard, but just the mental is something that has been weighing on them heavily, that feels really harsh. But one place I would say, as you were talking about like Root and Redbird together, I still think they have an upper hand in regards to Titan Kuri, just because of their cool. They always seem to be completely calm as how they make their decisions and how they execute them. Much better. That is my Alexa. Sorry.
Alexa wants to chime in. Alexa doesn't think Titan and Curry have a chance.
What you talking about? Oh man. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yes, I just think that on all lanes, yes, I do agree about Tino's in particular. He's definitely a threat to Jinkedo, but the Root Redbird, like mid to late game, considering how incredibly long the games have been, like 30 minutes, sometimes 40 something minutes. Root and Redbird take the upper hand on that regard any time of day. So Titan Kuri have to know to adapt to it.
Yeah, it is a good point to bring up about the length of games. With Pain versus Loud, the first 3 games, they were close for long stretches of it. The fights were going back and forth. The gold was not super one-sided for a lot of that game. And that's good, right? Because you obviously want to try and go into Loud, into a team fight ahead of them. And ultimately in those, when it came down to the very important moments, Loud were able to just be Loud and be the uncontestable force. But Pain they were not useless in these games. And that does give me a little bit of hope, just because I think that maybe is the Titan influence, that there is just a lot more fortitude there. There's no way Titan has any kind of mental block against anybody. He just not that kind of guy. Like, I think Titan has supreme confidence at all moments, which is what they need. Because they need that confidence to bleed into Decado, into Karaoke, and into Weiser, the players who have historically decided that they were bad when they see Loud for no apparent reason. So, like we touched on Decado, Karaoke as well. In the last final specifically, that was a rough one for Karaoke. We all remember the Kazakh game. It felt like his mental just absolutely shattered in game 4 for no apparent reason, because that was when they'd gotten their first win against Loud in grand finals ever, and it just didn't matter, and that was crazy to see. But he has been playing a lot better. Karaoke, especially, he's being perma-denied the Maokai, but he's making great impacts on the Vi and things like this. Don't pick Lee Sin. I'll say this. Don't pick Lee Sin, Karaoke. Please don't do it. Don't do it, okay? Yeah. Something simple. Something linear. Something uncomplicated. Please. Please don't pick Lee Sin, okay?
And it's supposed to be a deny on Croc too, but...
Let him have it. Croc is kind of sus right now. Give him Lee Sin. Give Croc Lee Sin.
He'll
trip himself up with this. So just don't do this, Karaoke. Please pick something simple. Yeah, exactly. No, I honestly want to see either of them pick Lee Sin, because I don't think that's their best pick right now.
Don't do it.
It's just not good. And then
the Samus plays it so much better.
He literally does. And then for top lane, we were waiting for Robo to become Playoffs Robo, and that Pain series was when he became Playoffs Robo, when that Jax play happens, and that is the kind of play that just destroys your mental game in a series. So Weiser was kind of back versus VKS. I thought he had a great series, and Weiser has been up and down, but he was doing very, very well. He was back to being solid, reliable Weiser, and he's one of the few people that has been able to get one over on Robo, especially during their regular season games. In the 1v1, Weiser can be very successful there. But you can't predict it, because there's no viable reason for them to show up and just become worse players on the day, and yet it just happens so often, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of with no apparent reason, as you said, which feels very complicated when you're this high in your level of gameplay. It must feel to them like you're always that close, but never close enough.
Yeah.
And now that I am remembering here that I did cast the Loud Pain series, I'm just like, oh, I was there. The Olaf games for Robo as well were...
Yeah.
Man, it was something. It was something. So you have just such a pool with the Jax, the Renekton, and Na that can work out just...
Yeah.
And the Olaf sometimes, just sprinkle on it.
Yeah, just in case they give it to you. Like, it feels like Robo is just, once he's feeling himself on his like core picks, at least one of them has at least a fine matchup with whatever you've taken, and that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough for him. You won't be able to punish him, and if you're not head on your shoulders, he will kill you 3 times and kill your backline 5 times, and then like that's just it.
Yes.
So he's just always waiting for the moment to strike, it feels like, Robo these days, and as soon as he gets it, that's just it. So there's no room for error here for Pain, which is tough. And that's kind of circles back around to how we led into this back earlier in the episode, when it was like Pain needs to come 100% ready with the draft, with the mental game, and with the hands. And if any of these are not here, good luck at MSI. Loud will enjoy watching.
Basically.
So
it's like the Holy Trinity, right?
I can't give up. I can never give up on someone taking it, especially now that this is a different flavor of Pain. The Titan Curry influence is big. It's such a different dynamic in bot lane that they have. If they can get their head in the game, if they can get an advantage over Root and Redbird, if they can crack the foundation of Loud, which is Root himself. He's been with Sales, he's been with Redbird. Root is the reason that they always make it, in my opinion, because he never under-delivers. If Titan could just get in there, if he could just get under that, then maybe.
Can they though?
Can they?
It's funny. I really liked.
There's no evidence.
I really liked when. It's not enough. The evidence is not strong enough, because we had, for the first game of Loud Pain, Loud got the Lucian army. Then there was another Lucian army on the third game for Loud. And when Root is already just so incredibly good at mid to late game, and you give them early and he's max it off, like, how do you even fight against it? Like, those ultimates, I think it's something that you mentioned about Titan himself, how last split used to be, especially on the Lucian, like going out forward and making some moves at not the very good moments. But this time around, yes, they're executing it well. I think Root is taking advantage of this as well. And I think he's just like the all-rounder, just so good on every stage of game and on any champion possible. that it's just difficult to draft against them because you're worried about Robo, you're worried about Tinos, you're worried about Root. How do you actually control all the variables is very difficult for Pain, especially when I feel like Carioca is still a little, sometimes just really good, sometimes just not quite there. Wiser has been more reliable, and Titan Corey really making the biggest of differences. If we get Jinkido doing well in the mid lane, it's going to really tie everything together.
Yeah, because I feel like we've seen all of the other elements find their advantages over Loud, except for mid.
Yes.
I feel like I've never, ever seen it from mid lane. And it has to be there. That final piece has to be there. Otherwise, there's just no hope. So please, no Ari for Jinkido, no Lee Sin for Karaoke. And then we're chilling, guys. Please. Please. Do not do this to me. So they're gonna game one is gonna be Lee Sin Ari in mid jungle, and I'm going to
it will be. I know it will be. I mean, to be fair, Carioca has been playing so much of Vi that it could be just Ari Vi, which I'm not as mad, but
no,
still.
It's more consistent, but still I would
I
would be sus. So we have to expect that Louder, the evidence, as we say, is all there towards Loud. We have not seen enough evidence to convict yet. We cannot say that Louder are going to be denounced as frauds in this split. But I hold out hope. The spark of Titan gives me hope for Pain. Let's talk predictions. So, series.
Shoo. Okay. So, can we do 2 predictions, please? Because we're talking about if Pain is there, or if Pain's mental is there, or if it's not there.
Pain
right?
plus brain, or Pain with loud derangement syndrome. Okay.
Pain square, just Pain and Pain.
Yes.
Okay, so for the Pain and brain, I would say they can do it in a 5 game. They can do 3v2. 3-2-2.
Yeah.
But if Pain plus Pain, then just take it in a 3-1. Could even take it in a 3-0, but I think 3-1 is more likely.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this isn't it's in the arena, like the CBLOL arena. It's not in a stadium or anything. So there is a similarity in environment there. I imagine that, honestly, I think Loud gets a little bit of a stadium buff at this point because they're all rock stars. So
it's true.
I think Pain plus Brain is still Loud 3-2. I think we just get so close, and then we still just, the dreams are crushed.
Don't do it.
Honestly. And then Pain Squared is just loud 3-0. They walk in, they walk out. It takes about 60 minutes in total. And
60 minutes for 3 games.
Yeah, and the Pain Zetes are just stunned. They are still like, did it start yet?
RMC cries in the corner.
Yeah, RMC will be crying in the corner. So I think I want to hope that Pain has brain, so I'm gonna go with Loud 3-2 as a final lock-in, but there's always every chance that it just collapses around their ears.
And that's one thing that we don't expect from Loud, right?
No, that it collapses. I would never bet on Loud to collapse in grand finals, at the very least. In this scenario specifically, I would never expect it. So we shall see. But for everyone, you'll have to join the stream on Saturday, this coming Saturday. That's the 20th of April. 20th. I assume it's normal start time, so midday Brazil. 5 o'clock.
1 p.m. Brazil.
1 p.m. Brazil. 5 o'clock UK time, and then some region of 1 p.m. And slightly earlier in the US. And that'll be on twitch.tv/CBLOL_English as usual. Everybody, of course, we would love to see you there to see how this split winds up and who is going to represent us at MSI. I think we are one of the last regions to clock in to MSI. We've seen almost, if not all, the other teams by now. So we shall see if Pain is going to break the Loud streak or if Loud is going to have another round at International. And we'll see how that goes. So remember to also follow us on Twitter at CBLOL_English, TikTok at CBLOL English. and join our community Discord with the links on the socials as well to talk to us about the games and the community and the region, etc. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We will see you for the grand finals on the 20th. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye-bye.